Welcome to the Hot News Channel, where we strip away the noise to analyze today's breaking stories. It is Thursday, February 26, 2026.
And what a massive Thursday it is.
Yeah, it really is. We have to start by declaring that today feels like a pivotal moment in American history.
Absolutely.
I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot in the media ecosystem. You know, every week is a crisis, every speech is historic. But looking at the convergence of events from the last 24 hours, last night's State of the Union address wasn't just a speech.
No, it really wasn't.
To me, looking at the rhetoric, the specific threats issued, and the reaction from the chamber, it felt like a potential war declaration wrapped in applause.
It certainly had that ring to it.
Yeah.
And while Washington clapped and the pundits are currently busy analyzing the optics of the suit or the tone of voice, the actual geopolitical ground is shifting beneath our feet.
Right, from the Persian Gulf to the streets of Guadalajara.
Exactly. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about the tangible mechanics of global conflict that kicked into high gear overnight. We are seeing tectonic plates move in real time here.
And that is our mission here today. We are digging into the hard data that the mainstream networks are just totally glossing over. We are looking at the actual cost of the promises made last night. We're going to connect the dots between a speech in D.C., a prison cell in Pakistan, and a burning zoo in Mexico.
Because we aren't just reporting what was said, we are analyzing what was hidden. From missing Department of Justice files to the reality of naval logistics in the Middle East.
Yeah, there's a massive disconnect.
A huge disconnect between the speech and the spreadsheet, so to speak. The official reality presented on television is increasingly at odds with the ground reality found in the intelligence reports and on the street.
Let's unpack this. We have to start with the elephant in the room, which is the State of the Union, and the drums of war beating for Iran.
The atmosphere in that room was electric.
But perhaps for the wrong reasons, right?
For terrifying reasons, honestly. The rhetoric was incredibly high. It was very reminiscent of the lead up to 2003, but with much higher stakes.
I want to play fact finder here for a second because the timeline presented last night was confusing for a lot of people who were paying attention.
It was completely contradictory.
Right. So President Trump stood up there and claimed to be a president of peace. That was his opening gambit.
Yes.
But in the same breath, practically the same sentence, he threatened to confront threats with overwhelming force. And he kept referencing this specific event, Operation Midnight Hammer.
Right.
Now, for the listeners who might have missed the fine print or the murmurs in the defense blogs, what exactly are we talking about here with Midnight Hammer?
So Operation Midnight Hammer is being framed by the administration as a previous covert strike that supposedly obliterated Iran's nuclear program.
Obliterated, that was the word used.
Obliterated, yes. The narrative being sold to the American public is that this was a decisive past victory, a mission-accomplished moment that totally neutralized the threat.
And the room went wild for it.
Oh, standing ovation. It paints a picture of competence and strength. But if you look at the analysis by Colonel Douglas Macgregor,
who is absolutely not a man given to hyperbole.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He has a very deep understanding of military strategy. He points out a glaring logic bomb in this narrative.
It seems like a contradiction that you could drive a tank through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if the mission was a success, why are we still talking about the threat?
Right.
That is exactly the point Colonel Macgregor makes. Here's the question he poses, and it's one every American should be asking right now. If Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated the program, why did the president also claim last night that Iran is weeks away from a nuclear bomb?
You cannot have it both ways.
You really can't. You cannot claim to have successfully destroyed the infrastructure and in the next breath claim that the infrastructure is on the verge of producing a world-ending weapon.
That's the critical disconnect for me. One of those statements fundamentally has to be false.
Precisely. Colonel Macgregor identified this as recycling the WMD playbook, the weapons of mass destruction narrative we saw with George W. Bush in Iraq in the early 2000s.
It's fear-mongering based on a shifting timeline.
Exactly. If the previous strike was so successful, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. The fact that we are having it suggests that either Midnight Hammer didn't do what they said it did, or the threat assessment is being manufactured to justify a new campaign.
It creates a boy who cried wolf scenario, but with nuclear stakes.
Yes.
It feels like deja vu, honestly. Weeks away. We've been hearing Iran is weeks away for about 20 years. I remember headlines from 2005 saying the exact same thing.
And if you look at the hard data, The weeks away claim is highly suspect on its face. Trump stated Iran has a weapon capable of reaching the U.S.
Which is a terrifying image for the average voter in Ohio or Florida, the idea of a missile landing in their backyard.
But look at the testimony referenced by Judge Andrew Napolitano. He brought up Tulsi Gabbard.
The director of national intelligence? This isn't an outside pundit. This is the person in charge of the intel.
Who stated under oath that the intelligence community found Iran stopped its nuclear weapon development program in 2003.
2003, that's over 2 decades ago.
That is the official finding. So you have the director of national intelligence saying one thing under oath based on classified assessment.
Yeah, that the program was halted.
Right. And you have the president saying another thing in a political speech, that the bomb is weeks away. There's a massive disconnect between the findings of the intelligence community and the rhetoric coming from the podium.
One is based on evidence and historical analysis, and the other appears to be based on mobilizing public sentiment for conflict.
It's a very dangerous game.
It raises the question, are we being led into a war based on a threat that doesn't actually exist in the way it's being described? But let's assume for a moment the conflict actually happens. We have a questionable why for the war. Now let's talk about the how.
This is where the reality check comes in.
Because this is where it gets really interesting and frankly a little gross. You've been looking into the status of the USS Gerald R.
The pride of the fleet. The most advanced aircraft carrier in the world. It cost $13 billion to build.
This is the ship that is supposed to project American power globally. It's the ultimate symbol of our dominance. But according to reports from Rania Khalek and George Galloway, this floating fortress is currently defeated by plumbing.
It sounds like a joke, but it's a logistical nightmare that speaks to a much deeper issue in military procurement and readiness.
The report is that the carrier is literally swimming in waste. They have 4,600 sailors on board, and the sewage system has failed so catastrophically that they had to emergency dock in Crete just to deal with the biological hazard.
Yes.
I want to dwell on that image for a second. The most high-tech ship in history sidelined because the toilets don't work.
We have to analyze the implications of this beyond just the yuck factor, although the conditions for the sailors are undoubtedly horrific. This is a severe readiness disaster.
How does something like this even happen on a $13 billion ship?
Well, the Gerald Ford uses a new type of vacuum sewage system. It's similar to what you see on airplanes, but scaled up for a small city at sea. It was designed to save weight and space. But in practice, it clogs constantly.
Wow.
To clear it, they often have to use acid flushes that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per flush.
And now it's failed completely.
Completely enough to force a strategic asset off the board. Think about the timing here. The Gerald Ford is supposed to be the tip of the spear in a potential strike on Iran. It's the launch pad.
Right.
If we cannot maintain the plumbing on our flagship carrier during peacetime maneuvers, how do we sustain a high-intensity air war? Disease spreads incredibly fast on a ship. Dysentery, norovirus. These things can take a crew out of action faster than enemy fire.
Morale plummets when you're living in raw sewage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It raises serious questions about the actual state of our naval maintenance and infrastructure. Are we building systems too complex to function in a real-world stress scenario?
It really bursts the bubble of invincibility. It's hard to project shock and awe when you're docked in Crete calling a plumber.
That's exactly it.
And speaking of invincibility, let's talk about the air war itself. I think a lot of people have this video game idea of striking Iran. We fly in, drop bombs, fly home, mission accomplished in time for dinner.
It is not that simple. Not even close. The logistics of this theater are a nightmare compared to what we're used to.
I was reading the analysis from John Waters. He's an F-16 pilot, so he knows what it actually looks like from the cockpit. He's flown these sorties. He said striking Iran is nothing like striking Syria or Iraq.
No, it's a completely different theater. In Syria and Iraq, the U.S. largely operated in uncontested airspace. We owned the sky. We could loiter, pick targets, and fly back to base without a real threat of surface-to-air missiles.
But Iran is different.
Iran has what Waters calls a kill ring.
A kill ring, that sounds incredibly ominous.
It is. 1,100-mile radius of integrated air defense systems. We are talking about Russian-made S-300s, S-400s, and indigenous Iranian systems, like the Bavar 373, which are highly mobile and networked.
So they can see us coming from miles away.
Yes. Waters pointed out the geography. To hit targets deep inside Iran, nuclear sites buried under mountains, pilots would need multiple mid-air refuelings. You're flying thousands of miles from bases in the Gulf or carriers further out.
Which means your tankers have to be up there too.
That means your big, slow, fuel-filled aircraft have to be in the danger zone.
So you aren't just exposing the fighters, you're exposing the support fleet, the gas stations in the sky.
Exactly. And those tankers are very easy targets for long-range missiles. If you take out the tanker, the F-16s and F-35s run out of fuel and fall into the ocean.
Which brings up the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Waters raised the exact question. What happens if an American pilot is shot down? Iran has a sophisticated military. This isn't a militia in the desert.
Yeah.
If a pilot is downed, or if a carrier already struggling with maintenance is struck by a hypersonic missile, we aren't just talking about a surgical strike anymore. We are talking about a full-scale naval war in the Persian Gulf.
And the speculation on that is terrifying. If a carrier gets hit, you can't just hide that. You can't spin that in a press conference.
No. And think about the economic impact. The Persian Gulf shuts down. The Strait of Hormuz is blocked. That is the choke point for a massive percentage of the world's oil supply.
Oil prices would skyrocket immediately.
$200, $300 a barrel. The global economy grinds to a halt. Inflation would look like hyperinflation. The cost of this applause line from the State of the Union could be a global depression.
It's a sobering reality check. We are talking about risking the global economy and thousands of lives based on intelligence that is actively disputed by our own DNI.
It is absolute madness.
But while everyone is looking at the Middle East, something massive happened right next door that is being completely overshadowed.
The situation in Mexico.
Yes, the chaos in Mexico. On February 22, 2026, just days ago, Mexican special forces killed Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho.
The leader of the CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the most violent, highly militarized criminal organization in the hemisphere.
This was pitched by the state as a massive victory. We got him, the ultimate kingpin takedown. The headlines were celebrating.
Of course they were.
But according to the analysis from WLA and Kim Iverson, the fallout has been catastrophic. It wasn't the end of the violence, it was the beginning of total chaos.
This is the classic Hydra effect.
Yeah.
You cut off the head and the body doesn't die, it thrashes. And in this case, the thrashing is setting the country on fire.
Because when you remove the central authority of a cartel, you don't get peace, you get a power vacuum.
Exactly.
Let's look at the hard data on this retaliation. It wasn't just a few gunshots. We are talking about 252 narco blockades across 20 states.
20 states. That is 2/3 of the country paralyzed instantly.
Guadalajara went dark. This is a major metropolis, a tech hub, a cultural center. It's considered the Silicon Valley of Mexico. Public transport suspended entirely. And this detail really stuck with me. Civilians were trapped overnight in the Guadalajara Zoo.
Imagine that scenario for a second. You take your kids to see the animals a normal Sunday outing. Suddenly the city is burning. The roads are blocked with burning buses and semi-trucks.
It's apocalyptic.
The cartel is enforcing a lockdown with high-caliber weapons. You have to sleep in the zoo next to the enclosures because it's too dangerous to step onto the street. That is the definition of a failed state scenario.
And the airports were paralyzed. U.S. tourists stranded with no flights out. OXXO convenience stores and gas stations torched systematically across the region. It looks like a war zone.
It effectively is a war zone. And we have to talk about the underlying power dynamic here. There is this leaked call that WLA brought up. It's from 2016, but it explains everything about why this cartel is so powerful and why this violence is so coordinated.
Oh, this audio is chilling. I have the transcript right here. It's El Mencho himself on the phone with the police commander. He calls him Delta One. This isn't a rumor, it's a verifiable recording.
Read what he says. It perfectly captures the essence of the state capture.
He basically orders the commander to relax his men. He says, relax your men or I will kill your family. I will kill your dogs. He's incredibly calm, but incredibly vicious.
And the response from the law enforcement officer.
The commander says, you got it, sir. He calls the drug lord, sir.
You got it, sir. That audio proves the depth of the infiltration. The state and the cartel were intertwined. The police were effectively employees of the CJNG.
So when the military goes in and kills El Mencho, they aren't just taking out a criminal, they are destabilizing the shadow government of the region.
Yes. The structure that kept a grim kind of order is completely gone.
And with El Mencho dead, there is no clear successor. His son is in a U.S. prison. His brother is in a U.S. prison.
So we are looking at a violent fracturing.
Mm-hmm.
Every local lieutenant, every plaza boss is going to fight for control. The violence isn't going to end with his death. It's going to metastasize.
It turns from a monopoly of violence into a free-for-all.
You will see splinter groups, smaller gangs, and increased brutality as they vie for territory.
And here is the bigger picture connection that people are missing. Guadalajara is a 2026 World Cup host city. That tournament is right around the corner.
It is. FIFA is watching this closely. You have a host city that just went dark, where the airport was shut down by cartel violence. This is a massive security failure on the global stage.
But we have to ask the hard question here. U.S. intelligence reportedly aided this operation to get El Mencho. Was the blowback calculated at all?
It really makes you wonder.
Did we anticipate that taking him out would light the country on fire while we are also trying to pivot our focus to Iran? It seems like strategic incoherence.
It feels like we are deliberately walking into fires on multiple fronts without a fire extinguisher.
And speaking of fires that won't go out, we need to pivot to a domestic story that just exploded again, the Epstein files.
The story that never truly goes away because the implications are too deep. It's the scar on the American psyche that refuses to fade because the wound was never properly cleaned out.
There was a breaking report brought to light by Lisa Rubin and Kim Iverson on MS Now. We've been waiting for this DOJ document release, right? The final disclosure. We were promised everything.
Right. The promise of total transparency.
Yeah.
The let the chips fall where they may moment.
Well, apparently it's not so final. Trump-related files are reportedly missing from this release.
And we have to be extremely specific here. This isn't just internet speculation or a random conspiracy theory. They cross-referenced the actual legal indices.
Exactly. They looked at the index of witness statements files that were legally provided to Ghislaine Maxwell's defense team during her trial. We know these files exist because they are listed in the court records. They have exhibit numbers.
Yes.
But when you look for them in the public release, they are gone.
So the question is, who scrubbed them and why?
And it gets darker. Judge Napolitano discussed a specific disturbing claim that is apparently in these missing or obscured files. It involves a 13-year-old girl.
This is the allegation that she filed a complaint with the FBI about abuse she suffered.
Abuse by Donald Trump.
That is the implication of the discussion regarding these missing files. The allegation is that she went to the FBI, filed a formal complaint, a 302 in FBI parlance. It was investigated, and now that paper trail is being actively obscured.
That is a bombshell.
Yeah.
If there is an FBI report about a 13-year-old girl and it's being buried by the DOJ...
It's obstruction of justice at the highest possible level.
Yeah.
It calls into question the fundamental integrity of the Department of Justice. But again, we have to look at the system as a whole. It's not just about one man.
Right.
If we focus only on Trump, we miss the forest for the trees. Dr. G did a deep dive into the other figures mentioned in these files. It shows how incredibly widespread this web was. It wasn't just politicians. It was the intellectual and cultural elite.
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking. Emails placing him on the island.
The smartest man in the world. It's really hard to reconcile that image.
It shows that intelligence doesn't grant moral immunity.
Yeah.
It suggests that the allure of what Epstein offered, whether it was young girls or scientific funding or just access to the absolute elite circle, compromised everyone.
And then there's Prince Andrew. Dr. G's analysis there was fascinating. He argued that Epstein wasn't just using Andrew for friendship or status. He was using him for trade secrets.
Trade secrets, exactly.
What does Prince Andrew know about trade?
Well, he was the UK's special representative for international trade and investment for years. That was his official job. He traveled the world promoting British business.
Oh.
He had access to insider financial information, upcoming regulations, and massive contracts. If you have a royal who knows what the Crown or the UK government is about to do economically, that is incredibly valuable currency for a financier like Epstein.
So it was a transaction.
Exactly. I give you a lifestyle, you give me information, I can trade on it. It transforms the relationship from pure debauchery to high-level corporate espionage.
And then the most gruesome detail of all, the forensic analysis suggesting potential buried bodies at the Zorro Ranch.
The New Mexico property.
Yeah.
The one with the strange temple structure.
We've heard rumors for years, but Dr. G was talking about actual forensic indications. Disturbances in the soil, cadaver dog hits.
It's horrific.
It makes you wonder, why is the media focusing on the missing Trump files specifically right now? Is it just political timing because of the State of the Union?
That's the cynical view, and it's probably partly true. Timing in politics is never accidental. Releasing this or highlighting the absence of it right after the SOTU is a tactic.
Right.
But from an analytical standpoint, it doesn't matter why it's coming out now. It matters that the Department of Justice appears to be openly violating a transparency statute.
The law is a law.
If the law says release the files and they are selectively redacting things to protect the powerful, whether it's Trump, Prince Andrew, or anyone else, It suggests the system is designed strictly to protect its own, not to serve the public.
It's a protection racket.
Essentially, yes. It confirms that there are two tiers of justice. One for the people who get arrested for a joint in their pocket, and another for the people who fly on private jets to private islands. The law applies to you, but not to them.
Which brings us to another form of protection racket, or rather, the lack of protection. I want to move to international human rights and the situation with Imran Khan in Pakistan.
This is a story that is heartbreaking and deeply alarming. And it is largely absent from the front pages of the Western press, which is a scandal in itself.
We listened to the exclusive interview with Alima Khan, Imran Khan's sister, conducted by Mario Nawfal. The hard data here is terrifying. Imran Khan has lost 85% of his vision in one eye.
85%. That is effectively blind in that eye.
Doctors are calling it a likely eye stroke or retinal vein occlusion, but Alima Khan was very direct in her assessment. She quoted her brother saying, "Asim Munir is going to kill me in jail."
Asim Munir being the army chief in Pakistan, the man effectively running the country behind the civilian facade.
Right, the details she gave. Khan was reportedly kept in a cell where he couldn't see for 2 weeks. He's telling the superintendent, "I can't see, I need a doctor," and they just completely ignored him.
That is deliberate medical negligence. In international law, that borders on torture. When you deny a prisoner necessary medical care to the point of permanent disability, you are using the prison system as a weapon. You are maiming him.
There are even allegations of slow poisoning.
And we have to connect this to the geopolitical context. Why is this happening and why the silence? Imran Khan is, by all metrics, the most popular leader in Pakistan. If they held a free and fair election today, he would win in a massive landslide.
He is. His party won the most seats even while he was in jail, and his party symbol was banned. The people clearly love him.
And yet his deteriorating condition is being met with absolute silence from Western allies. The UK countries that usually talk a big game about human rights, about democracy, about the rule of law, are totally quiet. Why?
That's the big question. Why the silence?
Because currently the West is conducting airstrikes in the region. They need the Pakistani military's cooperation for logistics, for airspace, for intelligence regarding Iran and Afghanistan.
But the airspace is key.
Yes. The U.S. needs the over-the-horizon capability. To fly drones from the Gulf to Afghanistan or monitor Iran's eastern border, you often cross Pakistani airspace. You need the general's permission to do that.
So Khan is expendable.
He is a bargaining chip that has been discarded. The calculus is cold. We need the airspace, so we will look away while you eliminate your political rival.
Alima Khan mentioned the arrest of peaceful protesters, the suppression of media.
She talked about the Punjab chief minister buying a Gulfstream jet while the country starves.
While the people are literally hungry, the leadership is buying private jets. It sounds like the pre-revolution days in France.
It's the classic breakdown of a state. But the specific targeting of Khan, denying him medical care until he goes blind, this is lawfare, turned into physical elimination. It's a passive execution. Exactly. You don't have to hang him if you just let him die of a stroke in a dark cell. And the West is watching it happen, calculating that the airspace is worth more than the man's life.
It's chilling. And it shows how selective our human rights concerns really are. We care when it's convenient or when it's an enemy doing it. But when an ally does it, there is silence.
Absolutely. It undermines the entire moral standing of Western diplomacy.
Now, speaking of technology and control, we have to talk about the war on tech that is brewing right here at home, the Pentagon versus Anthropic.
This is a constitutional crisis in the making, disguised as a contract dispute. It's the battle for the soul of advanced technology.
So Navarra Media reported on this. There is a clash between the Trump administration, specifically Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, and the advanced technology company Anthropic.
Anthropic, the makers of the Claude model. They market themselves as the safety-first development company. They were founded by people who left other organizations specifically because they were worried about safety protocols.
Right. The data point here is a $200 million contract the Pentagon has with them. But Hegseth has issued an ultimatum, a strict deadline. He is demanding that Anthropic remove its safeguards.
Specifically, the safeguards that prevent their autonomous algorithms from being used for mass surveillance of Americans or autonomous weapons systems.
He wants the guardrails off. He wants the safety catch removed entirely.
He wants a tool that can process data on 300 million Americans instantly. And he wants weapons that can pull their own triggers. He wants model autonomy. He wants the system to be able to execute kill chains without human intervention.
And the threat if Anthropic refuses to comply.
The threat is to invoke the Defense Production Act. This is a law from the Cold War era. It's what you use in wartime to make car factories build tanks. He wants to use it to nationalize the code or force the company to comply.
Or label them a supply chain risk.
Which is the nuclear option for a business. If you are labeled a supply chain risk, you are effectively blacklisted from the entire federal economy. You can't do business with the government, and often other companies won't touch you either because they don't want to lose their government contracts.
It's an economic death sentence.
It is a complete bend-the-knee moment. And Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, is holding the line. He is refusing, based on the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure and moral grounds regarding killer drones.
He is arguing that building a mass surveillance machine violates the Constitution.
Okay.
I can hear the counter-argument already, though. The military perspective is, look, China is developing advanced neural networks for weapons. Russia is doing it. If we are hamstrung by quote-unquote woke safety protocols, we lose. We need the best tech to win.
That is the dominant military argument. We need to be faster and more lethal. And from a purely strategic military perspective, they aren't completely wrong. If your enemy has a machine gun and you have a musket because you're worried about safety, you lose. But the civil liberty perspective is equally heavy, if not heavier. If you remove the human in the loop for weapons, you are creating a machine that decides who to kill based on an algorithm. That fundamentally changes the nature of warfare and human responsibility.
And what about the surveillance aspect?
If you allow these models to process surveillance of the entire domestic population, you are building a totalitarian turnkey system. Once that switch is flipped, you cannot unflip it.
It's permanent.
You have created a mechanism that knows everything about everyone owned by the state. It essentially renders the concept of privacy completely obsolete. It is the ultimate tool for authoritarianism, regardless of who happens to be in the White House at the time.
It's the ultimate panopticon, and it's happening right now this week with a deadline looming. It feels like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it's a real government contract dispute.
And notice the pattern here. Whether it's the cartel in Mexico, the silence on Khan, or this technology ultimatum, it's all about consolidation of power and removing the checks and balances.
Which brings us to our final segment, crossing back over the Atlantic to the UK and Russia. Because if you thought the nuclear rhetoric was just about Iran, think again.
The warning from Vladimir Putin.
We saw this reported by Alexandra Couras and George Galloway. Putin issued a very specific, very direct warning regarding French and British involvement in Ukraine.
He warned that transferring nuclear material or long-range capabilities to Kyiv, specifically things like the Storm Shadow missiles allowing strikes deep into Russia, would trigger a massive response.
And not just against Ukraine.
No, against British and French assets directly.
That is a direct threat to NATO members.
It is. We are talking about World War III scenarios being discussed openly on the global stage. He is saying, if you help them hit us, we will hit you. He specifically mentioned British assets, which could mean ships in the Black Sea or even bases elsewhere.
And meanwhile, the UK leadership seems to be imploding internally. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing a political wipeout.
The Rochdale and Gorton by-election. George Galloway talked about this extensively. The polls were showing a three-horse race between the Greens, Labour, and Reform.
But Labour should be winning these easily, right? Rochdale is traditionally a Labour stronghold. It should be a completely safe seat.
Historically, yes. But the dissatisfaction with Labour's stance on Gaza and their foreign policy in general is totally fracturing the electorate. The Muslim vote, the left-wing vote, it's all peeling away rapidly.
And there's the Galloway factor.
Right. He claims he was detained at Gatwick Airport specifically to prevent him from campaigning.
Detained at the airport. Just for trying to campaign.
To stop him from being on the ground, yes. If true, that is direct election interference by the state. It paints a picture of a UK government that is completely desperate, losing control of its own voters, and potentially walking into a nuclear conflict it cannot handle.
You have a government willing to risk war with Russia, but terrified of by-election in Rochdale.
It's the ultimate paradox of modern political power.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of ground today. From the State of the Union applause to the burning streets of Mexico, the missing files in D.C., the prison cell in Pakistan, and the tech labs in California.
The thread connecting all of these distinct stories is the massive gap between the official reality and the ground reality.
The official reality is the SOTU address. We are strong, we are peaceful, the economy is great, we obliterated the nuclear program.
And the ground reality.
The ground reality is the aircraft carrier has broken toilets. The obliterated program is a threat. Again, our neighbor is burning because of a failed drug war strategy, and the justice system is hiding files to protect the powerful.
We are walking the razor's edge. We are balancing on the edge of multiple conflicts. Iran, Mexico, Ukraine, while the domestic safeguards legal transparency, technology, ethics, Fourth Amendment rights are being systematically dismantled.
The institutions are failing to protect us, and in some cases are actively working to control or endanger us.
It's a lot to process for anyone. But that's exactly why we do this deep dive, to find the truth buried under the applause. Knowledge is the only real defense we have. You have to look at the spreadsheet, not the speech.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this broadcast. But here is a final thought for you to mull over. If the Midnight Hammer didn't work the first time, and the head of the snake strategy set Mexico on fire, why do we keep thinking the same hammer will fix the next problem? Maybe the tool is broken.
Or maybe the carpenter doesn't want it to be fixed.
If you found this analysis valuable, hit the plus or follow button on your podcast app and give us a like. Subscribe to the Hot News channel for more deep dives. Until we meet again, goodbye.